Many women seek therapy as their first step after infidelity, but they end up throwing in the towel on their marriage because they just can't get past the images, replays, and distrust, even after years of therapy. In this video, I'm going to walk through how to determine if therapy is helping or hindering the healing of your marriage after infidelity. And if we haven't met yet, my name is Soraya Bastian, and you are watching Beyond Breath TV, the place to be to overcome infidelity and build a thriving marriage you love. Now, let's start out with what your therapist likely isn't telling you, probably because they're not aware of this themselves. Infidelity causes emotional trauma to the body, and unless this is healed, therapy just doesn't work. Emotional trauma is defined as the end result of events or experiences that leave us feeling deeply unsafe and often helpless. It can result from a single event or be part of an ongoing experience, such as chronic abuse, bullying, discrimination, or humiliation. Emotional trauma affects the three parts of your brain that are also affected when one experiences a traumatic brain injury, or TBI, your prefrontal cortex, amygdala, and hippocampus. In order to understand why this is so important to address in your healing journey, I'm going to break down how emotional trauma impacts your brain. Your prefrontal cortex is responsible for your ability to choose different emotions and respond to situations in a way that represents who you are. But when you experience emotional trauma, you end up feeling like you have no control over your thoughts or your reactions, which often leads to lashing out in ways that are totally out of character. Now, your amygdala is responsible for the detection of threats so that you can appropriately respond with fear-related behaviors to threatening or dangerous stimuli. When impacted by emotional trauma, however, the amygdala becomes hyperactive. This leads to getting easily triggered by something as innocent as a look your husband does or doesn't give. Finally, the hippocampus participates in the three necessary stages in the learning and memory phase: encoding, which is the initial learning of information; storage, which is maintaining information over time; and retrieval, your ability to access information when you need it. After emotional trauma, you can have trouble telling the difference between the past and present, which leads to avoidance of situations that remind you of the trauma, and it can make it difficult to trust if he's being genuine about his actions now. On top of all this, if left untreated, trauma cells will continue to replicate in the body, making it harder and harder to control bouts of anger, fear, resentment, and anxiety. This is why, even after years of therapy, women have told me they still get triggered so easily by innocent events, like a certain song on the radio, which sends them on a downward spiral. They thought they worked through all their issues in therapy and don't understand why they still have these moments show up out of nowhere. They feel like they can never fully enjoy the moment or feel at peace. Can you imagine how much more difficult it would be to heal your marriage when both you and your husband are worried about what might trigger you next? Emotional trauma causes us to live in a heightened state of alert, all ready to hit the panic button at a moment's notice. And while this is helpful when there's real, immediate danger, this becomes physically and mentally exhausting when you are living in this heightened state day in and day out, never feeling like you can let down your guard and just breathe. And while therapy can help you understand why infidelity happened, it doesn't focus on how to release the emotional trauma from your body so you can communicate effectively with your husband and rebuild trust. This is why each week you repeat the same cycle of hoping things will improve after your session, only to end up back in the same spot by the time your next session comes up. With the women I work with, I never even ask them to tell me about the infidelity because they've retold their story 100 times already. And all that does is cause them to relive the trauma over and over again. Instead, I give them a clear plan to move forward so they can wake up from the nightmare they've been living for way too long. To truly thrive after infidelity, you have to clear your emotional trauma first. By doing so, you will be able to approach your marriage from a clear and confident state where you're not constantly questioning him, looking at his phone, withholding intimacy, or waiting for him to prove he's in before you make any effort. So, if you're still on the hunt for the right therapist or are about to throw in the towel because therapy hasn't helped you, know this: therapy doesn't work after infidelity until your emotional trauma has been cleared. By clearing your emotional trauma, you can reset your biological stress response, which will allow you to reconnect and rebuild a strong marriage from a place of feeling truly healed. If you'd like my simple 3-step blueprint for healing emotional trauma after infidelity, check out my free masterclass in the show notes below. And if you like this video, be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you get notified of future trainings just like this one.